Oh, what a day that will be, when Jesus, my Savior, I see. Let's turn to Daniel chapter 7 and continue our study through the Bible. Daniel tells us that this particular dream and vision came to him in the first year of Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, which means that Daniel at this time was probably somewhere around 84, 85 years old. Still serving the Lord. Still an instrument of God. God speaking to him, yet of the future. He had a dream and a vision upon his bed, and he wrote the dream and sort of summed up the matters. He gave us now the summation of the things that he saw in this vision, in this dream. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heaven were striving upon the great sea. In the scriptures, the sea is used as a symbol for the peoples of the nations. In the 17th chapter of the book of Revelation, which is quite parallel to this particular vision that he saw. In verse 15, the waters which thou sawest, where the horse sits, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. So the seas quite often just represent the multitudes of people upon the earth. And what a apt picture of the world's population as four winds are striving or blowing or creating this restlessness, this troubled sea. And the scriptures use the wicked, the troubled seas, as a symbol for the wicked, who are like a troubled sea. And if you've ever seen a sea in a hurricane or in a storm, the troubled sea is just no rest, just that restless energy that is there. And thus he sees this four winds striving upon this great sea of humanity. And four great beasts came up from the sea that were diverse one from another. The first was like a lion. It had eagle's wings, and I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Now, most Bible commentators see these four beasts as paralleling the four metals of the great image of Nebuchadnezzar. The head of gold representing the Babylonian Empire, replaced by the chest of silver representing the Medo-Persian Empire, replaced by the stomach of brass, the Grecian Empire, crushed by the legs of iron, the Roman Empire, and out of the Roman Empire coming the 2 feet mixed of iron and clay with the 10 toes, that weakened revival of the Roman Empire in the last days. And because there seems to be parallelisms in these consecutive kind of kingdoms that rule the world, most people see these as a parallel of Nebuchadnezzar's dream. There have been a few recently, not many, who see in these four beasts kingdoms that would exist at the end of the world's present era, the end of the Gentile era. And thus they see the first one, the lion, as Great Britain or the British Empire. That had the symbol of a lion. England has the symbol of the lion. And they see the empire, the wings being plucked, and thus the weakened condition of the once great British Empire. In the bear, of course, the bear has been the symbol of Russia. And so they see Russia as the bear. And the leopard they see as a federation of Muslim nations that have yet not actually come to pass. 4 of the major Muslim nations combining together, and then, of course, the revival of the Roman Empire in the fourth beast. That is a possibility, and you must always keep your mind open one thing about prophecy, it is never completely and fully understood until it is completely fulfilled. And so we look at it and we say, well, it certainly appears to be this. And I personally believe that the beasts are parallel to the nations, the kingdoms that parallel the dream of Nebuchadnezzar. And we will look at it in that way. Thus the lion, which, of course, interestingly enough, Isaiah, as he prophesies of, or Jeremiah, as he prophesies of the coming Babylonian kingdom, likens it as to a lion. In the palaces of the Babylonian Nebuchadnezzar, they had these winged lions that sort of guarded the gates to the palace, and thus Daniel, being in the palace, would have seen them many times, and thus the lion could well represent the Babylonian kingdom. The power of Babylon was taken, and of course the man's heart given to it could be a reference to the change, the radical change that came to Nebuchadnezzar after his period of insanity, and then the mellowing from the great pride and all that he once had as he came to acknowledge that the God of heaven rules over the kingdoms of man. The second beast, like a bear, it raised itself up on one side, and the Medo-Persian Empire, they see it as it raising up on one side, the Persian Empire sort of overshadowing the Mede. And it had 3 ribs in its mouth, and some see the 3 kingdoms that were conquered by the Medo-Persian Empire. However, they conquered many more. And the 3 ribs in the mouth, between the teeth of it, and they said unto it, arise and devour much flesh. Notice that these are wild kind of devouring, destroying animals. And thus it fitly describes the kingdoms of man that are basically leading to bloodshed, leading to destruction. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, and people see in this the Grecian Empire, which had upon the back of it 4 wings, and they interpret that as the tremendous speed with which Alexander the Great conquered the world. And the beast also had 4 heads. When Alexander the Great died at a very early age, there was not anyone in the kingdom that was powerful enough to assume the rule over the whole Grecian Empire. And so the Grecian Empire at the death of Alexander the Great was divided unto 4 of the generals. And there came actually 4 powers out of the Grecian Empire. That of Asia Minor, that of Syria and Egypt and Macedonia. So the 4 generals that sort of divided the Grecian Empire, and thus the 4 heads that come out of it, and dominion was given to it. Now in verse 7, you get a beast that is indescribable. He cannot liken it unto any beast of the forest. There was this 4th beast, and it was just dreadful and terrible, or awesome. It was exceedingly strong. It had a great iron teeth. Of course, the iron of the symbol of Rome in the vision or the dream of Nebuchadnezzar. And it devoured and broke in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it, which surely does describe the Roman Empire and how it's bludgeoned the world into submission. And it was diverse from all of the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns, paralleling the 10 toes of the dream of Nebuchadnezzar. And the final 10 nations that will federate together in the last days that will be related in some way to the Roman Empire, and very possibly the European community will develop into this, the federation of those kingdoms in Europe. Now I considered the horns, that is the 10 horns, and behold, and the word considered is, I was looking steadfastly at, sort of pondering, looking in amazement, and there came up among them another, that is an 11th horn, a little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots, and behold, this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. And 3 times in the chapter, he speaks of the mouth that speaks great things. So one of the names for the Antichrist could be Big Mouth. But he is known by many different names: Son of Perdition, the Beast, the Antichrist, and the Man of Sin, and is known by many different titles. But I beheld, or was watching, the Antichrist here in Daniel chapter 7. Just to give us some other background, turn to the 13th chapter of the book of Revelation, and there we read concerning the Antichrist, and you will see the parallelisms between John's writings and that of Daniel. I stood upon the sand of the sea. He saw these beasts coming up out of the sea in Daniel. I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And upon his horns 10 crowns, or diadems, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. So these great things that he says are actually great words of blasphemy against God. And the beast which I saw was likened to a leopard. He had feet like a bear, and his mouth was the mouth of a lion. And so we have there the first 3 kingdoms sort of combined. The lion, the bear, and the leopard are sort of combined in this final little horn, or the Antichrist. And the dragon, that is Satan, gave him his power and his throne and great authority. That is why it is so manifestly wrong to blame God for all of the tragedies that are happening in the world today. The tragedies are happening because the world is in rebellion against God's law. The world is under Satan's power. It continues to be. And when the Antichrist comes on the scene, according to Revelation 13 here, verse 2, the dragon will give to the Antichrist his power, his throne, and great authority. And so what he promised to give to Jesus, he will give to this Antichrist, this man of sin, son of perdition, in the last days. I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death. His deadly wound was healed. And all of the world wondered after the beast. And they worshiped the dragon, Satan worship, in the last days, who gave power unto the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things. There we have the big mouth again. And blasphemies. And power was given unto him to continue for a space of 42 months, or 3.5 years. 1,260 days. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme the name of God. They blasphemed the tabernacle and those who dwelled in heaven. At that time, you'll be dwelling there, so he'll blaspheme you as you're dwelling, those Christians, you know. Oh, what a time the world is going to have when we go. Phil Donahue is going to have a big thing over this. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. The saints there not being the church, but Israel, the Jews, with whom God will be dealing in this last 7-year period of time. Power was given to him over all of the families and tongues and nations, and they that dwell on the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of the life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If any man have an ear, let him hear. And he that leads into captivity will go into captivity. He that kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here's the patience and the faith of the saints. So a description there of the Antichrist, now in earth. So we'll get to that when we get to Revelation. But you think I'm not going to live that long. I'm going to surprise you. So Daniel, coming back to Daniel now, chapter 7, verse 11, I beheld, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld even till the beast was slain, and given, his body destroyed, and given to the burning flame, cast into Gehenna. As concerning the rest of the beast, that is the lion, bear, and so forth, they had their dominion taken away, their power was taken away, and yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. Now, Babylon still exists. Today it is called Iraq. Persia still exists. Today it is called Iran. Greece still exists. So these three kingdoms still exist, but no great power anymore. They are just minor powers in the world today, and yet they still do exist to the present day, though not as powerful kingdoms as they once were in history. But he was grieved in his spirit. The visions troubled him. He didn't understand them. And so I came near unto one of them that stood by. Now, there were probably angels, or in the book of Revelation, there were elders. When John saw the visions in the book of Revelation, and John didn't understand what was going on, the elders would oftentimes explain to him what was going on. When no one could take the scroll and loose the seals, and John began to sob, one of the elders said, "Don't weep, John, just hold on a minute, watch now, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, he's going to prevail, and he'll take the scroll. You don't have to cry about it. I mean, God's got it all in control." And at other times, the angels would explain to John a little more fully the visions that he was seeing. Here was one standing by, probably an angel, and Daniel goes up and he asked him the truth of all this. What does all this mean? So he told me, and he made me to know the interpretation of the things. For these great beasts, which are four kings or kingdoms, which shall arise out of the earth. Now, this is a very brief, you talk about a very brief summation. Daniel said, I give you the summation. This is a very brief summation of the vision. Is that these four beasts are four kings that are going to rise out of the earth, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever, even forever and ever. So these are the kingdoms of man that will reign for a period of time, but ultimately the kingdom will belong to the saints, and they shall reign forever and ever. As in Revelation, as we hear the worship of Jesus, unto him who loved us and gave himself for us, and he has made us unto our God kings and priests, and we shall reign with him upon the earth. The kingdom will be given to the saints forever and ever. Right now, Satan is in control. Right now, the powers of darkness are holding sway. But there is coming a glorious day in the future when the kingdom will be given unto the Lord and unto his followers, the saints. That's the brief summation. So now Daniel wanted more. Tell me then, he said, I like to know the truth about this fourth beast. That's the one that Daniel was really fascinated by, which was different from the others. He was exceeding dreadful. His teeth were like iron, his nails like brass, and he devoured and broke in pieces and stamped the residue with his feet. And what about those 10 horns that were in his head? And of the other one, that 11th one that came up, before whom 3 of them fell, even that horn that had eyes and a mouth, there he is, the mouth again, that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. What about that 11th horn that rose up and all? And I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. Now, in Revelation chapter 13 that we read earlier, we read that the Antichrist made war with the saints, verse 7, given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. Here it says he prevailed against them, made war and prevailed against them. The words of Jesus to Peter, when Peter acknowledged that he was the Messiah, the Son of the living God, Jesus said to Peter, Blessed art thou, for flesh and blood did not reveal this unto you, but my Father which is in heaven. I say unto you that you are Petros, a little stone, but upon this rock, Petra, I will build my church. What rock? The confession that Jesus Christ is the Son of the living God. He's the Messiah. That's the foundation of the church. And Jesus said, Upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. That is why the saints could not be the church, because the Antichrist does prevail against the saints. And as we further study the reign of the Antichrist, and as you look at it in chapter 12, he makes war against Israel, and many of them are slain. Those that escape down to Moab, where they are protected for a period of time in the rock city of Petra. But that's in another lesson, and we'll get that at some other time. But you can just file it away in your minds for a while. Where he said, the fourth beast is the fourth kingdom. I beheld, and he made war with the saints, prevailed against them until he will rule until the Ancient of Days came and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. And come, ye blessed of the Father, inherit the kingdom that was prepared for you from the foundations of the world. And thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which will be diverse from all kingdoms, and will devour the whole earth. In the 13th chapter of the book of Revelation, we find the whole world being dominated by the Antichrist. And he shall tread it down, break it in pieces. And the 10 horns, out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, and he will be diverse, that is the Antichrist, the 11th horn, be diverse from the first, and he will subdue 3 kings. And he shall speak great words, again the great words, but this time against the Most High, the blasphemies against God. And he will wear out the saints, the Jews of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time, times and a dividing of a time, or 3.5 years. He will have this power over the world and over the Jews.